I guess, can I get a motion to call the meeting to order?
So moved.
Second.
Victoria, did you get the votes in?
I'm just waiting for Yorgos.
You know what? I'm logging in now, so I'm yes.
You're yes. And Brian? I think Brian's there.
Okay.
Brian is muted. Just if Brian wants to give a verbal or board docs. Brian, are you a yes to open the meeting?
I'm guessing there's some technical difficulties. Maybe, I mean, it sounds like we have 6 yeses, so we can go on, right?
We have 6 yeses? I'm going to skip Brian then. I have no Brian and no Alex.
Or do we have 5?
We have 5. I have 5. I can go without them.
They're both on.
I'm here.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's a yes from Alex.
Okay. And Brian yet?
Looks like maybe some technical difficulties.
All right, so I'll put him as not present at vote.
Yeah, or if he just joins, he can, because we see him there, so maybe he can just tell us later. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Moving on to public input. I have received I have 2 emails to read from folks who want to wish Mr. Nichols some well wishes. The first is from Jim Kinnear, who we all know is a teacher and the head of the teachers union. And he writes that, especially because, like everyone else, we are in these uncharted pandemic waters, Mr. Nichols is a great choice by the Sag Harbor Board of Education to be superintendent. Jeff has been in the district for 25 years. He knows the students, teachers, and the staff. He knows the community. As we move forward, his calm, fact-based decision-making will help the Sag Harbor School District survive and thrive. All members of the team will come together and make this historic time a positive one. Best wishes to Mr. Nichols and the entire school district community. So I thought that was very nice. And then another one from Peter Solo, who again is well known as a teacher, a parent of Pearson graduates, and a former Board of Education member, and he runs the Rudershan Trust. And he writes, I've known Jeff for more than 20 years and have witnessed him from a variety of different perspectives, that of a Board of Education member, a parent, as coordinator of the Rudershan Educational Trust, and as a high school, middle school teacher. During his tenure at Pearson as Pearson principal, we have seen a continual improvement in our educational program and the positive transformation of our school. This is due not simply to his leadership, but also importantly to Jeff's aspiration to make things better. From his personal experience, he possesses an understanding of the organizational history of the district. We are living through extraordinary times. I'm confident that he has the capacity to effectively deal with the unprecedented challenges we face today. His thoughtful leadership and performance over the past weeks have been exemplary. In this context, Jeff's appointment to the position of superintendent is a relief because I believe he will provide continuity and stability in a time of profound uncertainty. I'm confident that he will also provide reassurance for our students, the district, and for our community. So again, very nice. And I also had some well wishes from Matt Malone and Brittany, and welcome them to, since they're on as panelists, they can, if they want to express what they want, if as well as anybody else on the call, feel free to join in.
Ms. Sobey, can I do that right now? Is that?
Yep.
Okay, well, congratulations, Jeff. And I too I'd like to commend the Board of Education for all their efforts in completing this search during what's clearly has been a very challenging time for us all. But I've had the pleasure of knowing Jeff for well over 20 years, and we've worked closely together for the better part of that time. And Jeff, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. Jeff's very intelligent, very hardworking, and I've always been impressed with being able to watch his leadership in action. I'd say above all, I've admired how in his decision making he weighs all the options, but keeps what's best for children at the forefront of everything he does. So again, congratulations, Jeff, and I just look forward to continue working with you in the years to come, and together, along with everyone else in the district, I know we'll do great things for the children of Sag Harbor and this community. So good luck with everything.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, awesome. I would like to add to Mr. Malone's sentiments. I'm being able to see Jeff as a mentor, as well as work with him collaboratively running the middle high school. I would say his biggest strength that gets misunderstood a lot is his calmness, but also his desire to stay out of the spotlight and spotlight the other people who are doing the hard work and putting the kids first. And his perspective about getting every stakeholder when making decisions and moving the district forward or the school forward when he was in charge of Pearson is invaluable, as well as his insight with knowing all the stakeholders and the institutional knowledge that he has. So congrats, Jeff.
Thank you.
So it's an exciting night. And, you know, if anyone wants to add anything else or add it in later, feel free. Going once, going twice. Okay. So we will move on to superintendent's report.
Okay, so there are two things I want to talk about. The first is the school calendar issue. Originally, with snow give-back days, those days were supposed to be May 22nd, May 26th, and April 13th. But because of the executive order, we were in session April 13th. So we knew at the time that we had to sort of kick that down the road and schedule another day because we did not use any snow days this year. So my recommendation to the board is to move April 13th to May 21st, which would result in the snow days taking place on Thursday, May 21st, Friday, May 22nd, and Tuesday, May 26th, with Memorial Day being May 25th. So that's the recommendation.
Seems reasonable.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There aren't any AP exams on the 21st, are there?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, thank you.
Seems good to me. I'm good with it.
I'm good with it too.
I'm good with it.
So it's on the agenda, yeah, it's on the agenda for us to adopt a revised calendar. But I think Jeff just wanted to preface it so that is part of the minutes and broader, you know, public discussion.
Good. So the second issue is the school budget vote. And there's been a lot of concern on the part of superintendents regarding the timeline with which schools had to react and put things in place. So I'll go over some key dates and then I'll give you a status report of where we're at. The key dates, the budget vote was moved from May 19th to June 9th. The postcard notice. They didn't specify a date when that had to be done, but we should be sending that out later this week. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. The report cards are due to the state May 22nd. And given that the due date for a school board to adopt the budget would be May 21st, except in situations where there's a possibility you could receive military ballots, or that you would be sending those out. And in military ballots would have to be sent out by May 15th, which means for all essential purposes, the deadline to adopt the budget is really May 14th, which is why it's on the agenda for tonight for your consideration. So those are the big dates. This timeline required people to kick into gear, and the district clerk, Victoria Handy, took a leadership role. And what I'm going to talk about now in terms of what's happened is largely due to her efforts and some of her colleagues in the business office. So the postcards will be delivered from Syntax on Wednesday, which is our public relations firm. We're going to be sending 6,000 of those out. And on one side will be the information in English, and on the other side, it will be in Spanish. Included in that postcard will be directions for anybody who is seeking a ballot in Spanish. So that's the route we chose to take under advisement from council. In addition to that, the absentee ballots, we have to send out, again, 6,000 of those. The draft ballot was completed earlier today. The envelopes have been ordered, and the way it's basically going to work is a large envelope will be mailed out to Joe Smith if he's a resident. When he gets that envelope, he opens it up, and inside will be a return envelope and an oath envelope. The return envelope is what the oath envelope is placed in and then mailed back to the district. So that oath envelope, a person signs their ballot with their selections, puts it in the oath envelope, seals it, signs it, puts it in the bigger envelope, mails it back to the district. We are permitted as a district to open that envelope, not the oath envelope, but the envelope that the oath envelope is placed inside, to record the ballots that we receive prior to June 9th. The oath envelopes we cannot open until the day of the election. I believe it's at 5 p.m. And the tentative plan is for those envelopes to be counted the following day, June 10th. In preparation for all the mailing that needs to go out with all the things I just talked about, the clerical staff, as part of their normal work schedule, are being asked to come in tomorrow and Wednesday, and they will assist with arranging for all this material to go out as per the executive order. They'll also come in on June 10th to help with the budget count. So again, I want to thank Victoria for all her work. Lori Baum assisted as well, and some other people in the business office, but we're in good shape, big picture. Any questions?
Jeff? Hi, this is Chris. Thank you for walking us through that. So just to reiterate, the date of the 9th, does it need to be postmarked by then or arrive by then?
Victoria, are you on the line?
As far as I'm aware of, it has to arrive to the district clerk's office by 5 o'clock on the 9th. But I will double check that. But it is our understanding that it is 5 p.m. on the 9th in the district office.
Terrific. Yeah, I think it would be important to communicate that so that folks are, because sometimes absentee ballots, as long as they're postmarked by the date that's been announced, they're fine. And then the other question people may ask is, if it's the 9th and they realize they didn't send it in, can they drop it off physically?
So in the past, it's always been not by the postmark, but it has to reach the district clerk by the deadline. We're actually going to have somebody go out to the post office towards the end of the day to make sure we've received all our mail, so that there's nothing sitting in the post office. And you had another question there.
She asked if people can drop it off.
Yes, we'll be there to have it dropped off.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
May I interject? This is Mike on Chris's earlier question. There is an AP exam on May 21st, World History, and Statistics is on May 22nd.
So it's going to interfere with our snow days, but that's outside of our control. So the 22nd, it was originally noted on the school calendar. So unless we wanted to alter that, we're sort of in the boat that we're in, which is that the Thursday and Friday we'd be off, and that the number of students, a number of students would take the assessments on those days.
So I think the question would be, I know that today there was an assessment and there were at least one of the teachers, because my daughter took an assessment, one of the teachers and an administrator were connecting with students to make sure that they got what they needed, all of that, which some of that didn't arrive, I believe, until today. They wanted to make sure the kids got all that they needed so they could log on. So if we're going to be closed, I think that those students would probably still need that support for those 2 days.
Yeah, and we'll make arrangements for that. If it's either through the teachers or through administrators, we'll have contact people available.
Mr.
Perfect.
Nichols, can I intervene here? There's a note here. It seems Mr. Kinnear put a comment up that the statistics exam is on the 20th. Just to bring that to your attention.
Yeah. So the 20th is not one of the days in question.
Right, just relaying the message.
Yeah.
And Jeff, do you want to mention that we've done this before with IB exams?
Why don't you elaborate a little bit, Mr. Guinan or Ms. Carriero?
Sure. So this isn't without precedent. Last year, the IB French exam was on one of the snow days, and I came in and we administered it, and we were planning on doing that this year before IB exams were canceled.
But again, I think it's important to note that, Chris, your comments about making sure that the students have all the information they need and the assistance that a teacher or an administrator would normally provide is present, and we'll make sure that happens.
All right, so it sounds like we can move on. We were talking about the budget vote and election process. So first, thanks to Victoria and everyone that is working to get this together. I know it's a big fire drill, so appreciate that. Jeff, did you also want to go over, I think the deadline to submit petitions for board seats was today.
Yeah, it was 5 p.m. today. And my understanding is that Victoria has the names of those community members who submitted the petition prior to 5 p.m. Is that correct, Victoria?
Yes, do you want me to read them out? So
Sure.
we have Brian DeSessa, Alex Craigsman, Sandy Krull, Ronald Reed, and Helen Roussel. And they will be listed in alphabetical order as I read them onto the ballot, sorry.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we can move on to the budget presentation.
So Ms. Baum has been working hard over the last few weeks, actually the last few months, to prepare this. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lori. Are you there, Lori?
Yes.
Okay.
Scott? Hello?
Hey, Lori.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yes, we can hear you, Lori.
Okay.
We can hear you.
All right. Scott, is there a way that I can click the presentation through?
Not if it's not running off of your machine, unfortunately.
Okay.
So you could just give me a nod and I'll do it.
Okay. All right. We'll start with the next slide. I've put the budget through on a function code so you can see the various areas of the budget and compared it to the current year's budget. You can see the changes both by dollar and by percentage, and the percent of the actual total budget itself. So instruction accounts for 54.78% of the budget, and that part of the change has gone up 2.89% in total. The overall budget has gone up 3.37%, and the dollar change from this year current to next year proposed is $1,447.48. And underneath, I've broken out the various components and explained what's included in each one of those. All right. I can go to the next slide. I did a visual. I think sometimes this shows out a little bit better where you can really see how much instruction takes place in our budget. It's 55%, and then employee benefits is another 24%. The rest of our budget, transportation at 4%, and general support is 12%. Our interfund transfers right now are about 4%, and that includes the amount of money that we transfer over to the debt service fund. All right, you see the debt service, the 1%, but that is only includes our current debt service for bands and TANs. It doesn't include our long-term debt service. We can go to the next slide. This is the proposed budget by object. You can see again, personnel services, which is actual people, is 54%. We're basically a service industry. We're teaching children, and it does make up the largest portion of our budget, with employee benefits down below at 24%. So roughly 78% of our budget is instruction, is personnel services and the related benefits. Our equipment is less than 1%. Our contractual is approximately 9% of the budget. And we can go down materials and supplies, 1.55. Computer software is less than 1%. Our tuition, and this is tuition that goes for special students with learning disabilities who go to special schools, and also it would be tuition for children that are going to another district or for occupational instruction.
That is Lori, if I could just stop you there, it's Brian. If we could just maybe explain for people watching it that's a big jump, or if someone could just weigh in so that everyone understands why that number is such a big jump in terms of total from last year to this year.
It depends on when we have special education needs, we can have a student or several students who can come into district, and they could be high-cost students. So in this case, we do have a high-cost student. That tuition is going to be significant for this one particular child, and we're going to have to, cover that cost. And we're still doing what's the best at lowest representation. I think Colleen can talk to that. Is we do at our hope is to go and get everybody, if we could, go and teach them in our district, all right? But of course, some students will never be able to go and make that. So we have to do the next, the best according to their IEP.
No,
Colleen?
absolutely. And I think that's very important, but I just think to note that it's a year over 61% increase, just so everybody's aware.
Yes.
Yeah, I think probably the best explanation for that would probably come from Dr. Mears if she's, and Laura, you did a good job there, but Carlene's numbers really guide you in what you put into the budget. So Dr. Mears, if you're on the line, do you want to elaborate?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so within that budget line for tuition, we do have a high cost student, as Lori had mentioned. And that is actually a residential estimate, which is really the majority of the change in the budget. We're anticipating that we may use that for the residential placement, and we do get some money back on that, but we have to be prepared for the full tuition up front. Additionally, that line also reflects what we call contingency tuition. So if any student enters the district that needs additional services outside of what we could provide, like a significant 6-to-1-to-2 classroom or a 12-to-1-to-4 ratio or a BOCES setting, we would be prepared to provide those services to that student.
And so, Dr. Mears.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
Okay, we can go down next to, here's the appropriation. Okay, we go back. You can see BOCES went down, textbooks went down, our debt service went down significantly. Our employee benefits did go up, and part of that is related to really pension costs and health costs. Actually, our health costs are really kind of flat this year because we did not get an anticipated increase for the second half of the year. So that will be reflected in the first half of the next fiscal year. We have some savings there. And our interfund transfers went down overall because of debt, but we do have an increase in some of the other two funds that we fund, cafeteria being one of them. Go to the next slide. And you can see, again, how the appropriation budget is 78% of the budget is salaries and benefits, and all the other expenditures really are only 22% of the budget. And that is everything from supplies to utilities to interfund transfers. Okay, this is pretty much in line, all right, with everybody else in the education world. Go to the next slide. I broke out the proposed budget into 4 different categories where you can see the different amounts which go into administration and program support, what goes into programs for students, what goes in for employee benefits, and our capital budget. Our capital budget, really, most of that is operations and maintenance and debt service. Employee benefits, the largest amounts are going to be your health and dental. After that is going to be your retirement, Social Security. Our programs for students, the 2 big ones are going to be our teaching, co-curricular and educational support, and our special education and related services. Technology and instructional media takes a fairly significant amount, and of course our pupil transportation to get the students here to the school. Okay.
Lori?
Yes?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to kind of get your confirmation, just so that folks aren't aware, they understand it, that the employee benefits piece is a big chunk, but the cost of what the benefits are, the raw cost of what health insurance is or dental, is not set by the district. It is set by third party. So
that is correct.
And then we have agreements in our contracts or our labor agreements that indicate if that employee or that unit contributes. But from a day to day, week to week, year to year. It's really controlled by outside forces.
That is correct, 100%. And actually, if you look at the increase, all right, 2.56 is really fairly low for health insurance. Health insurance in the past has gone up, sometimes in the double digits. So we really can't complain this year with less than a 3% cost increase. It's a large number, so when you take any percentage of a large number, it's always going to look significant. And it is a significant portion of the budget. Overall, the budget, you know, again, you can see that it's increased 3.37%. There's nothing that's really, you know, you can see like some large increases, but percentage-wise, but actual dollar-wise, they are not really that large. It's just that when you have a smaller number and it increases, it takes, you know, percentage, it's going to look like a very large amount. Okay, we can go on to our next. This is the three-part budget component. This is what's required by the state for us to show and include in our budget statement. It breaks up the budget into three different components. Here they put the supervision for the teachers and the schools into the administrative component. All right, so all the principals and their support team are up in the administrative component. This, the program component is all the costs related to the actual instruction in the classroom and the support that they receive there. Also included in this is transfers to special aid fund and the lunch fund, all right, because those are also considered program components. The capital component stays the same. It's operations and maintenance, transfer of capital fund, and your debt services. So under this, you can see that program component is basically 80% of the budget, and the support team, all right, your administrative, is roughly 9%. And the rest of it goes to actually, you know, maintaining the schools and including the debt that, you know, the public has approved to make improvements. We can go on to the next slide. I just did this in a picture thing to go on. I think sometimes that we see better in a picture-wise to go and see the different components. And you can see, once again, program is the major cost of the budget. I put on here the 2020-2021. This is the legislative budget, which was enacted. The caveat is, this is the first time they've done this, is they are going to allow quarterly aid cuts. So every quarter they're going to review the amount of receipts that have come into the state, and based on that, they will go and make any cuts to the budget that's currently in place as far as aid is concerned to us. If there was no cuts and all the receipts came in, this is what we would receive. Right now, we know that the first quarter, they've come in about 15% less. They're warning about a 20% cut. I think the cut will probably be for us around 20%. We are a high wealth district. They're not going to go and do 20%. They might take a total of 20% overall, but the high wealth districts are going to take more of the cut, and the high needs districts will take less of a cut. So I did go and plan for some of the hit in our revenue budget, but this is what I started out with to work with. Okay. Go to the next. This is the legislative budget with reductions. All right, now, one of the reductions I did make was to foundation aid, and I took a 20% straight cut off of that. Building aid, I kept the same. Transportation aid and BOCES aid, I cut based on the fact that this is an expense-driven aid. So what we spend in this year is going to go and tell us what we're going to get next year. So right now, our transportation costs are definitely going to be less. I'm also expecting less of a cost in BOCES. So that means that the aid that we get next year will be less. So I did recognize that in the revenue budget. I kept software basically the same, our excess cost aid the same, and our high tax aid the same. Our payment in lieu of taxes, I didn't take any decrease on. The rest of it was all as reported before, the 24.5 for the driver's ed, the non-resident tuition, our charges for shared services, and our grants, interest, and miscellaneous income. So at this point, we're expecting $3,303,027 before the general level levy tax. And at this point, we're asking for a 2.7% increase, which would be $39,737,613. Using this, we still need to make up $1,591,783. I believe that I gave you an estimate that are from fund balance from this year, and we're proposing that we use that fund balance from excess funds that we will have left over from this year and apply it to next year's budget. So a give back to the taxpayers of $1.5 million, 1.6. Right, and you can see that, the difference, in state aid is roughly $500,000 less than what we received this year. A total revenue before taxes less of $724,000. And, that is part of what is causing us to really take a larger amount than we took in the previous year, which was $470,000 from our ERS reserve. We can go on to the next slide. Here's our picture of revenues. Taxes make up basically 90% of our revenues. So if something drops in any of the areas, that's really the only way to make it up is going to be in the tax area, and any savings that the district has managed on the previous years. You can see next to that, the next, I was just going to say, our pilots is very small, all right? But our fund balance this year is going to make up about 4% of the revenue. You can go, Scott. Thank you. This is the property tax levy limit worksheet. I just wanted to go and put it back out there. We do have a 3.07% allowable increase. We're asking for a 2.713 increase. The difference between that and the maximum tax levy is $138,899. If we went up to the 3.07, that's how much less we would have to take out of the fund balance. We go to the next slide. This is the historical values of Southampton and the town of East Hampton. I just wanted to give you an idea of how they change from year to year. I did get estimated tentative values, but the tentative values are always subject to change, so I did not put them in. But roughly, Southampton has told us they're going to, our taxable assessment should be around $7.8 million, and East Hampton has notified us they're expecting it to be around $5.8 $1 million. Go to the next slide. This is the projected tax impact. I just showed you for basically the last 5 years. I show in each one of these, you have two things for 2020 and 2021 budget for next year. The first line is taking the assessments as of last year and applying the equalization rate and computing the tax, what it would be. The second one is computed with the 1.55 tax base growth. Now, tax base growth is just, it's either new homes or new buildings or improvements that are taxable, all right, which would increase your tax assessment on your home. So it's not a home that's existing that their tax assessment is just going up just because of cost of, values have gone up. It's actual new construction costs. So that's a fixed number, all right? So based on that, because we do have new buildings and homes in both the town of the town of Southampton and the town of East Hampton, all right, we're going to actually, I'm projecting a decrease in the actual tax bills to the taxpayers right now of $79.74 for East Hampton residents with a home taxable assessed value of $6,400, and the town of Southampton for an assessed value of $1 million of $69.78. So monthly, all right, they would see a tax reduction of $6.64 and $5.82. Okay. Next. I did a 5-year property tax cap limit and levy look back, and I just wanted to show what we could have had as a property tax levy, what was allowed by law, and what we actually did as property tax. And I'm showing you the difference for each year. I did a 5-year total. All right, and you can see that it's up over $1 million. If it was compounded, which is normally what would happen, you would have the full tax amount, and then the following year, I'd go up and say, okay, it would be 3.87%, and over those 5 years, it would have been up to $1,472,917. And just the total of the difference in the rates is 3.15. That's how much less we have taxed, and that comes out to 1.217. I think it's important to look at it because right now we're going into our fund balance, over 1.5 million, and you can see how it adds up over the years, all right, and it makes a big difference as we go forward to, consider going to the full tax cap.
Lori,
Right,
this is Chris. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the estimate of the amount of money that we're going to have left over this year, right? We're going to have money left over in our budget from what was budgeted versus actual, correct?
Correct.
And what?
Now, okay, I believe I think just on the one number, just based on if nothing, we didn't have COVID-19, we would go and have 1.2 million left over. All right. If with COVID-19, I estimate another additional 800,000. And that 800,000 is made up of various components. We're obviously not employing substitutes. We're only paying the bus drivers for their contractual hours, not the hours that they normally actually get. So there's a whole bunch of components that make up that 800,000. So this year in particular, we have, close to $2 million over.
So it sounds like we're going to be over more than what we need to reallocate from the fund balance. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I'm saying for the difference, we will go and make up part of it and put it into our 4% fund balance. All right, to keep it up to the 4%, which is not, it's not a lot of money. And the other difference is to go and fund the TRS, which we were first allowed to start funding next year.
Right.
And I would try to go and fund as much as we can into our reserves, because we're expecting the next couple of years until everything comes back to normal is going to be a little tight on state aid and revenues.
No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to ask because the 5-year property tax cap limit and levy look back almost made it look like we were undertaxing people. But in the past 5 years, we've never struggled to continue to have our programs and be able to cover our bills with what we've taxed people. And it's good that we didn't tax more, because we're ending up with, even if we hadn't had COVID, we would have ended up with over $1 million extra. So I just don't want people to think that we are in this hole and we're having to pare back on all these other parts of the budget to try to reallocate that fund balance. It seems like we're in good financial shape and we made some really smart decisions.
You are in good financial shape right now. I'm very concerned for our future years. We do have the funds to go and make up that difference, but every single year it's getting larger and larger. So that is my, big fear, is we really don't want to go and start relying so much on excess, going into reserve for everyday type of expenses. We want to be able to use those reserves for next year. I'm sure that our pension costs are going to go way up, and it's like these one-time hits that are really good to be using the reserves for. So, that's my, when you have the reserves, is not to use them or rely on them as a total funding source for our ordinary and kind of like expected increases. All right, but for those one-time big shots that we have to pick up, and then they'll go hopefully down in a couple of years. All right, so I expect pension costs to go up. I expect health insurance to go up. I expect our unemployment costs, which have normally been low, but right now we have, a lot of the substitute teachers are claiming unemployment. So I expect our unemployment costs to go up. So this will definitely be things that we can go and hit the reserves for next year.
So Lori, I just want to chime in that that you said earlier, and it's accurate, that the governor plans to look at the state's revenues on a quarterly basis. So there are a lot of unknowns with regard to whether or not, the 20% will be in fact 20% or a greater number. And we do have some contingency plans in place to address any additional reductions in state aid without tapping any more reserve funds. Because tapping reserve funds, as Lori has said 2 or 3 times, is not necessarily a healthy multi-year budget approach, because once you do it one year, if you don't commit to doing it in subsequent years, you're going to see a spike in your tax rate. So it behooves districts over the longer term to bring down the amount of money that a district has to kick in every year from fund balance. And you want to get to a point where the budgets are tighter so that what's budgeted and what's approved by the taxpayers is close to what's expended at the end of the year. But I said a lot, but big picture, there are contingency plans in place, unfortunately, that will impact program in the event that there are state aid reductions exceeding the 20%, which Lori referenced earlier.
I mean, because we're talking about that 20% to be made right away, and if receipts come in less, all right, and this is, in years past, at one point, the state did come in and they cut the budget by 50%. And we're hoping that the federal government does go and fund the state, but if receipts come in, all right, the state government cannot work on a deficit. So they'll cut where it's necessary.
Lori,
Okay.
this is Yorgos. I just a question for you. I
Sure.
was looking at the other more detailed file we got last week, and just wanted to confirm, when I was looking at the 2019-20 expenditures, were those the actuals?
Those are the actuals to date, and you have to remember that a lot of especially now, we're a little behind. Everybody's behind in billing us, and they're also behind on, we're behind on paying. All right, so everything's in, so our encumbrances, which is really another look at it, all right, is those are when we put a purchase order in place, we've ordered it, but we haven't received any goods yet, and we haven't paid the bill. So services is a big item, all right, that a lot of times we have ordered services. They might have even provided the services to date, but we haven't paid it. So when you look at, expenditures paid to date, you do have to keep in mind that there's things that the district owes, but it's not going to show up in that number.
Yeah, no, because I see, I mean, it only adds up to 30.5 million. And in reality, where were we, do you think? I mean, have you updated like actuals plus the 3 months forecast where you think we're going to be?
I went and thought all the savings total together would be that we would end the year close to 2 million.
2
all
million.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, excess funds. All right, and a good.
And I just had one more question. When I was looking at the more detailed slide, there was an item in the actuals about 1.3 million that was related to the Learning Center for like special maintenance. So I guess that was something that we spent money last year, but do we expect that there's going to be another like special item like that moving forward for the Learning Center for this year? When we're wrapping up?
All right. No, we basically have all the expenses for the Learning Center have been recorded. You'll see that, part of the budget from last year rolled over, and those were encumbrances. Those were purchase orders that were put in place, and the work has been done, but we haven't paid on a lot of the work. The part of it is because it's just billing. Part of it is because some of it we've asked the architect to go through and tell us whether the work has been done to, and if he's late sending it to us, we can't approve it to pay it. All right, so.
But we don't expect like moving forward in the next year to keep spending any money on the Learning Center for this kind of work. Okay.
Not that kind of money. I'm sure that there are things that are going to come up just because there's inevitably things do come up, but nothing to, I mean, this was kind of planned, was known all along, and they planned on putting a lot of that money in because we knew that the budget we had in the capital fund was not going to be able to complete the building.
So, Laura, just to interject, Yorgos, with a status update, my understanding is that the project is 99.5% complete, and so there will not be significant expenditures beyond what's for your consideration later in the meeting, which is the construction of the wall behind the school. Preliminary estimates on what that cost would be, and we can discuss that later this evening. But beyond that, there should be no significant costs going into next year related to the Learning Center.
I had one more question when I looked at the more detailed budget. So I saw a lot of the buses costs that were increased. For example, I saw like the one budget of last year was 5,039,000, and then it went about 350,000 up. Is there a reasoning behind why those buses costs are going up?
On BOCES in particular, because the BOCES budget overall really didn't go up. If we go back a couple of slides where you go into the object codes, all right, object codes for BOCES services actually went down overall 36,000 $700. So some of the BOCES costs were just reallocated. If you go back one more where it says proposed, go back one more. There we go. You see BOCES services is $490 to $499.
Okay.
So that's all the BOCES in the entire budget.
Okay, so it was more a reallocation of things in here.
Yes.
Okay. And then I just have one more like general question, and maybe that's more towards Jeff. I mean, given the current situation we have with COVID, and you know, there's some people that they're maybe moving out here. If our residency rates go up and we have more like residents within the district, like coming to the school, or we have out of district, I mean, should we be looking at like how this could be budgeted in here, and what's our capacity for like accepting new students, and like what would be the cost from the one versus the other?
So you asked a couple of different questions there, and maybe I didn't understand it correctly. But the one situation is where we have residents or people moving to Sag Harbor who have children who are entitled to attend the school, and in that situation, we've got to obviously accommodate the increased enrollment because they're residents and they're paying taxes. The capacity at the high school with the current staff is such, and the middle school, that we could accommodate an increase. You know, a 10% increase in enrollment is about 90 students. If you were to assume that it was spread middle school, high school, elementary equally, you're talking about 45 students grades 6 through 12 and 45 at the elementary level spread across those 6 grades. So if it's 6 grades with 45 students, you're talking between 7 and 8 students a grade. Again, the middle school, high school could accommodate that without staffing issues. Mr. Malone, do you want to weigh in on the possibility of absorbing an additional 45 students pre-K or K through 5?
Sure. If we were bringing in 40 or 45 students spread out K through 5, we would have the capacity to, obviously, and we'd have to accommodate resident children. The change at the elementary level would just be the class sizes. The number of students in each class would just be a little bit larger. Obviously, we're used to now of class sizes relatively in the range of 18 to 20. So clearly that would go up a little bit.
And then to add on to that, to answer the second part of your question, Yorgis, and I think this is what you're asking, is should we be, from a budgetary perspective, also be considering the possibility of increased tuition as a result of people who are residing out of district asking to send their kids to school and paying the tuition? Was that the second part of your question?
Correct. And then what's our capacity for that? Because I know like we have different like capacity levels that we can allocate for residents, you know, without increasing the teaching staff and everything versus, you know, if they're non-residents, we say, you know, at some point we cannot accept any more students. So that's why I wanted to see what's the maximum we can get from we can accept from non-residents, and how this would translate in revenues for us.
Yeah, and I think that's a discussion for me to answer in a comprehensive manner right now would not be well thought out. That's a discussion that would happen between the administrators looking at class sizes. And by the way, all of this will be impacted by the social distancing requirements that schools will have to adhere to, possibly limiting students in a particular class to 10 or less. So, which might necessitate staggered schedules and a blend of remote learning and in-class or in-school instruction. But to answer your question specifically with regard to students or families choosing to pay tuition, that is simply where the administrators sit down, they look at their current staffing levels, they look at our capacity, and then depending on what the request is, then that will dictate what the decision is and what's communicated to the board in terms of what our plan is.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one last question. So if we had the discussion in the previous meeting that potentially we might move some of the elementary school kids, maybe kindergarten or first grade, I don't know, like to the learning center, just so we can implement the social distancing. Would there be any additional costs by running that building at more of a full capacity?
Well, the costs would be, there'd be soft costs related to the move in terms of moving furniture and things like that over, but most of that can be absorbed by our existing custodial staff. So the soft costs shouldn't be significant. I believe that additional costs, if the building's open, there'll be some utility costs. I mean, the alternative is that you don't use the facility. So you'll have additional utility costs, but the staff, they're already on staff, so there won't be any increase in staffing costs. And we should be able to fill any administrative need, which was always the plan from within. So there has to be a building administrator on site, and we've had preliminary discussions about how to accomplish that with the existing administrative staff that we have. So a short answer to your question is, we don't anticipate any significant cost increases related to that move.
Okay, great.
Can I ask one associated question? I think it's a quick one, which is this
Sure.
budget is, just confirming, this budget is based on the continuing tuition agreements with Wayne Scott and Sagaponic, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Going on to the next slide, this is a historical look on the budget vote results. I particularly like to look at the last couple of years, where from years 9 through 16, because that's when the budget cap was in effect. And you can see that we're well over the 50% pass rate. I'm hoping that this continues. This, of course, is going to be a strange year because we're doing 100% absentee ballots. So I would expect that we would get a high return, because it doesn't take much effort to go in, X in your spots and sign off and put it in the mail. But
we need a 60% pass rate, right? Under the tax cap law?
No, we're under the tax cap, so we just need a 50%.
Okay.
So if you were to, in answer to your question, Chris, if you were to go over the allowable tax cap levy,
then you need 60.
And you need to keep a majority. Correct.
Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. The next slide. This is the property tax report card. I've done this based on the current budget that I'm asking you to adopt tonight. If anything changes, of course, this will change. I do have to file the property tax report card the day after the budget is adopted. So this is page 1 of the property tax report card. And if we go to the next slide, you can see the second one. All right, so it basically gives the breakdown. It shows how much we have in reserves and what our taxes are, what we're asking for a property tax levy, what we can actually ask underneath the 2% property tax cap. Okay, we can go to the next one. I just want to remind everybody we have Proposition 2 for our new school bus. We did take a bus out of service that had over 200,000 miles on it, and this is the bus that will replace it. It will not increase the tax levy because we've already put that money away in a reserve. So we're asking permission from the public to spend $56,068 from the reserve to purchase this bus. The next slide. This is the rest of the calendar. Though it says subject to date change, dates are tentative at this stage. They're really kind of fixed. We do know that the June 9th is a definite date. The June 1st is the date that we are planning to have the budget hearing. And the link for the meeting is listed there, so anybody in the public can go on to the website and see our presentation. And next, I just want to remind everybody that I will be putting together the budget statement. I have to show the proposed budget in a 3-part format, which is the administrative, program, and capital budget, and it's prepared in very plain language. It's required to be put into a detail of a IST3 report, and I will be doing that shortly. It'll include the property tax report card. We'll also include the school academic report cards, our fiscal accountability, the administrative compensation for at the budget, and will be in there. The exemption reports for both the town of Southampton and the town of East Hampton. And because we are not going to be able to allow people into the buildings to go through the booklet, we will be putting this on our website. If later that, depending on, I don't think anything's going to change between now and the vote, but if something did where the public could come in and touch things and we don't have to worry about the transmission of the virus, I would make a hard copy available in each of the buildings and also at the library. And next, I just want to thank you to everybody, especially my team here in the district. They've all been great, the administrators. And thank you to the district community who support the budget and support the funding of our schools. And does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Lori. That was excellent.
Lori, I just want to let you know, John Germain Library is closed, the physical building.
Okay. So right now, this will just be on the district website. All right, until, unless anything changes. If something changes in the future, the near future, I would make the hard copies.
Mr. Nichols, this question's for you. In the past, it has been practice that the business official, and usually it's a superintendent, gives that budget presentation to a variety of community organizations like the PTA or like Civil Council. Obviously, in the context of what we're dealing with now, there's no physical meetings, but perhaps you want to speak to the availability to set up those meetings virtually if organizations would want that.
You're muted, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. We've already set up a meeting. We have a tentative date for a presentation for the Noyak Civic Council. I was in touch with the president, Elena Loretto, and we settled on a date. I think it's, I don't want to get it wrong, but it's either May 19th, 20th, or 21st, at which time we'll conduct our budget hearing remotely, or budget hearing, whatever you want to call it, presentation. And then other organizations, I'll speak with Mary Adamczyk and Victoria to see what we've done in the past and reach out to those organizations to see if they'd be interested in a presentation as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Lori, I just had one question on the bus. I know there's the bus that got in the car accident earlier this year, and then I know we got insurance money for that. So is this new bus is separate, right? Or
that it is separate. It is separate. All right. The one that was in the accident, we're going to be replacing that with insurance proceeds. And then part of our ongoing plan is to replace buses 1 to 2 a year as they start aging out. And the one that's on the proposition is to replace a bus that's aging out.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure because I figured there might be questions about that.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jordana,
So we
can
can-
you just clarify something that was said earlier
Sure.
about they do need to be received by the district clerk on June 9th by 5 p.m. It has nothing to do with postmark. I checked with Mike Vigliotta, and it is to the district clerk by 5 p.m. on June 9th.
Great. Thanks, Victoria.
And that is listed on the postcard.
Great.
Okay, because we made sure the wording on postcard was that.
Awesome. So let's move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve items 7.1 through 7.13?
So moved.
Second.
I'm just waiting for Brian.
Didn't pop up.
You want to give me your verbal?
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Should I reload this, Victoria, or?
I'm not sure why it's not coming up for you. You can try to reload.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Brian, I actually messed up earlier and I joined the public version instead of authenticated. So maybe you want to just X out and then just make sure you're joined the right way.
Checking again. All right.
In the meantime, we can do it verbally as needed. Moving on to action items, can I get a motion to accept the donation from William Betts in 8.1?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I just wanted to thank them very much. I'm just trying to pull up the amount. Is it like $41,000?
Yes.
41,000.
Right, so a very significant donation, and particularly in this day and age, really, really appreciate it. So we would like to thank them very much for their generosity to our children.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve item 8.2?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can there just be a public explanation for this increase?
This increase is for recovery from NYSER, our insurance carrier, and it is for the cyber incident that happened earlier in November of this year.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve item 8.3, temporary suspension of budget transfer policy?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. How long is it anticipated that this policy will be suspended?
So, so let me get that, Lori.
Okay.
So it's likely to go through the closing of the books, which would be mid-October, at which time it would stop. I did talk to our district council earlier this week about this issue, and he noted that this is pretty standard protocol for school districts, that in June, May, June, usually the transfer policy, if you will, is suspended for a period of time to allow the business office to do what they need to do. And typically what would happen is the Board of Education establishes a monetary limit. You do that every year, I believe. And I think it's $10,000. And anything above that amount would require board approval prior to, with the suspension to allow the business office to do what they need to do. The prior approval does not exist, but the transfer would have to appear on the next Board of Education meeting agenda. And again, I talked to our counsel who said this is a pretty normal operating procedure for school districts in New York State.
Is there ever a cap put on this? Because I thought there had been in some previous years that it was, you know, that it was raised from 10,000 but wasn't open-ended for, because what we're talking about is, you know, potential 4 to 5 months, right?
Well, the 4 to 5,
Yep.
it's only to cover activity through June. All right, so the longer amount of time is just because it's taking time to close the books. All right, so it's not that it's open for the new year. The new year, the budget policy, transfer policy stays in effect.
All right, so this is just for the next six or 7 weeks. Expenses accrued in the next like 7 or 8 weeks, whatever it is.
Right.
It's for that year ending.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Because your policy basically says within monetary limits as established by the board, the superintendent is authorized to transfer funds within the budget. Whenever changes are made, they're to be incorporated in the next board agenda for information only. So that's the only budget transfer policy you have on file. And that's what I talked to our counsel about today. And again, I don't want to be redundant, but I already shared with you what he said.
Yeah, and I think it's been our past practice as well. I remember us having the same discussion last year. If there's a number that might, that might be the reason why it looks different, but we've approved this action before.
I looked back and we've done it at least from 2012 every year.
Yeah, I was just going to add on that we do this every year, and every year it's like, wait, what are we doing? What is this? And it's like, no, we do this every year. So I just encourage our board to remember this next year, because this is part of the procedure for closing the books.
Yeah, I just think it's good to explain publicly so that folks understand what it is. I've already voted to approve it.
Yes, thank you.
May I have a motion to approve item 8.4, appointing a CAS coordinator and extended essay coordinator for the 2020 calendar year?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
When do these positions start and for how long? Just because it seems like we're towards the end of the cycle.
Yeah, so they're two different, the extended essay coordinator and the CAS coordinator, which is 8.4, should have been appointed at the beginning of the year. And then the next agenda item, which is 8.5, those are a little different because those positions run across 2 years. In other words, teachers start working with their mentees, if you will, in around February, March, and it concludes in December of the following year. So I'm working on, with Mr. Guinan, on a system to put in place where where it's more efficient to pay for the extended essay positions referenced in 8.5, and also a system whereby the IB appointments annually, we don't have a situation like we have tonight where they're being appointed essentially retroactively.
Thank you. So 8.4, they've already been working in these positions, and 8.5, these are folks that are working with juniors right now, and so this will extend into the senior year for those students?
I believe that the first part of your comment's correct. The second is that these extended essay advisors, which I think the compensation is between $250 and $300 for each student they work with, that work started in March of last year and finished in December of 2019. Without getting into detail, my recommendation after talking to the union, which I haven't done yet, is that we might be able to address that compensation issue through timesheets because the amount is so minimal rather than having board approval for a $250 stipend.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Unanimous, thank you.
May I have a motion to approve item 8.5, appointing Pearson High School IB extended SA positions?
So moved.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Thank you, that's unanimous.
Can I get a motion to approve item 8.6, the contract with H2M Architects and Engineers?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a quick question on this one. We don't have, do we have to have like a resolution or something that we're not employing the previous architects regarding the retaining wall, or we don't have to?
We don't have to do that based on my discussions with our council.
Okay.
Mr. Nichols, perhaps it makes sense just to share with the public what this is for.
Sure. So this is to sign a contract with H2M, which is an architectural engineering firm, to provide design services for the retaining wall in the rear of the Sag Harbor Learning Center, and with the goal being that they can produce the bid documents and guide us through the construction phase, the awarding of the bids, and then the construction phase with a completion date prior to the beginning of the 2020-21 school year.
Thank you.
I'm just waiting for Susan. That is 6 yes, and Brian DeSessa abstained. Motion carried.
Moving on to 8.7, can I get a motion to appoint the election inspectors?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just think it might be helpful. Sorry, I'm echoing. To note that there's no amount listed here because they are actually already on the payroll as employees, and this will take place during the school day. But because of COVID-19, we need to have employees do this that are here.
Right. Just to elaborate on that very quickly, we had appointed election inspectors in the middle of March, I think March 18th. And given the health concerns that you just noted, Chris, we thought it more prudent to just have our employees fill the role of election inspectors and election chairperson at no additional cost to the district, but we feel as though we can better provide for the safety and welfare of everyone if we do it with our own employees.
There were actually also some appointed on the reorg in July as well. That is unanimous, thank you.
All right, can I get a motion to adopt the 2020-2021 school budget for item 8.8?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just request that after the vote, if we could not just only publish the presentation given tonight, but the more detailed line item budget on the website. So if anyone wants to see in greater detail, particularly considering that everything's remote right now, that it's easy for the public to do so.
Yeah, I think that's what Lori said she was planning on doing in lieu of having physical copies available at every building.
It's part of the budget statement.
Right. Is the thicker line by line item one?
It would be I could show it in two different ways. I could show it in the 3-part component, and I could do it by ST3 codes, which is, it's line by line detailed as far as the state is concerned. It just consolidates like equipment codes. It would, into with the function. It's how I report to the state the different expenditures.
The only other discussion I have on this is just, I mean, given that we're in this completely unknown situation in everybody's lives, Lori, I just remember Ellie telling us a few months ago saying, we have no idea what's going to happen. You have to adopt a budget based on our best guess. But, can you just walk through a little bit of kind of down the line, like when do we like if we need to make a major change, what has to happen, or when, just talk through a little bit, when does the money actually come in? Because I know we have to get that bond or loan to cover us for that period of time, before taxes are gathered. So I think it would be helpful just because, we're about to adopt the budget in such a time where we really have no idea what's going to happen.
Okay, we normally look to borrow at the end of the summer, the very beginning of September, based on the cash flow. And we're looking, to cover for up and through really December, because we start receiving receipts until January. We're expecting that we'll hear on a quarterly basis if our state aid is being cut, that we can make judgment calls. I would think that the state is going to let us know for the first quarter shortly. Really, Jeff, I know I have a whole list of expenses that we are putting on the back burner that we might not fund depending on what comes in. If it really is a very, very large amount where we have to come up with, we would have to come to the board and we would speak to you about it, about either going through and taking money out of our fund balance, or we could go and, make any necessary cuts that might need to be made to so that we're not ending up in a deficit position at the end of the year. So we're going to be watching the budget very carefully and our expenditures very carefully and revenues to make sure that we're keeping this up on a very contemporary basis, that we're not letting things go, and that we're reacting in good time.
Thanks. And then the opposite is also true, right? So we can adopt this budget, but if school is not in session in September and we have remote learning again and we're having accrued cost savings, it's also true I know it's obviously true we don't have to spend all the money, but is there a process if, let's say, further reductions need to be made? Is there a process to kind of receive less? Or I realize this is...
Well, we really have until the budget. What's being voted on right now is the budget, all right, not so much the tax levy. We are notifying the taxpayers what we're proposing the levy be. If something changes, you have until really
October, right?
October, yes. It's very late in Suffolk County. So to make a decision on how you want to fund the budget. So you have until that time to go and actually say what the tax levy will be. You really can increase it, all right, because public needs to know for, you know, the whether they're approving the budget or not, but you can certainly not, you know, tax them as much, or you could go and change how you want to fund the various part. Instead of taking it all out of, say, fund balance, you could access a reserve.
Mhm.
So there is options for the board.
Great, thanks. I
Sure.
appreciate that. I remember Ellie had said something about an October date, and so, until, you know, this all started to come together, I hadn't quite understood exactly how that all works, and I think it's just really helpful that, you know, this is the budget, but then there's still time to make some other adjustments if we need to, since we really don't know what September is going to look like.
So I just wanted to add to this one. So maybe then we should be monitoring the situation and maybe run a couple of scenarios, you know, that in case we have to continue distance learning for 3 months or 6 months or something like that, what cost savings we would have like from this situation, and maybe be ready in case we want to decrease the tax levy.
Well, we're not
before
going to,
October.
yeah, we would really need to know how long, say we do long distance learning, how long it would be. And the way the state has been going is they are not giving us any kind of long-term plan. All right, so I think that would be very difficult. I think that it comes into September and we have to make a decision in October, we can make a recommendation. But I don't know how many scenarios, you know, we could do.
Yeah, I think, let me just weigh in. I understand in principle, Yorgis, what you're asking, and I also understand the reason that Jordana brought up the question. But, you know, looking out 6 months or 12 months with the current situation, you're very limited in assuming anything or making projections based on certainties, because they don't exist right now. From my perspective, in terms of planning for next year, what I'm most concerned about are cost increases related to the demands associated with COVID-19 versus possible cost savings. I know that we have a responsibility to look out for the taxpayers, but if you think about what other countries are doing right now with reopening schools, whether it's additional equipment, whether it's additional staff, to take students' temperatures, to buy equipment that students have to wear to take their temperatures, to make a commitment to have smaller class sizes, to additional medical staff. All of those things, from my perspective, speak to the likelihood, if anything, of increased costs rather than cost savings. So again, I understand the point that you're trying to make to sort of cover all bases. And we've had some of those discussions already, but I don't want to spend too much time on that, looking through that lens, when I think it's much more likely that the other lens, in terms of cost increases, is what we should be spending our time on.
There's also another issue is once the budget is passed, we have to go and have a way to fund the budget. So if costs, even if costs aren't materializing, we still have to have the mechanism in place to fund the entire budget. All right, so you can't go in kind of saying that, all right, we did this budget and now I think that we're going to go and have a $200,000 cut so I don't have to fund it. You still have to fund the full budget that was approved by the public. If we don't spend it, it'll be, you know, excess at the end.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm just waiting on your.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Just a process question for the board. It looks like there's a community member that posted a question in the Q&A section. And my inclination is we don't have a public input 2 on the agenda. My inclination would be just because even though it's just one question now, I'd worry that in the future it might get distracting if we have a bunch of questions on each agenda item and it's not how we run our normal meetings. My thought is to add a public input 2 at the end of this meeting where I would read that question. But I wanted to get everyone's thoughts on that from the process perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I do as well. I saw the question. I'm in agreement.
I agree.
Great. So if I forget, please remind me and we'll have a public input 2 type of option. Okay, moving on to item 8.9. Can I get a motion to adopt item 8.9?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Alex? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Great. And last but not least, certainly not least, can I get a motion to appoint Mr. Nichols as our next superintendent?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it, Jeff.
Thank you.
I just want to congratulate you, Jeff. I think you're going to do a great job and bring some stability to the district. And I feel really good about leaving the board in your hands. And the district in your hands. So thank you for stepping up and applying in this trying time. Thank you.
I just want to thank Mr. Nichols for his tremendous leadership over the past several months, and thank him for agreeing to step into this position. I think you're going to be a fabulous superintendent, and I'm so glad you're willing to do it.
Yes, thank you very much.
I would just add that having worked with you for a decade, I can certainly attest to your enormous contribution to the improvement in the district. And I wanted to share with the public that the board did go through a in-depth and time-consuming search where we saw a phenomenal pool. We had some incredible choices, and yet it was clear that Mr. Nichols was the right choice for the district. So I want to thank you so much for continuing to be willing to lead and step up. So thank you, and I'm sure you'll do really well.
I look forward to working with you for the next year as well, Jeff. I'm happy to work with you.
Thank you very much for stepping up. We're excited.
Can I just say a brief word?
Would love it.
All right. I really, I don't like talking about myself, so I'll keep this brief, but I really do appreciate the confidence that all of you showed in selecting me to serve as the superintendent. I've worked in Sag Harbor now for over 20 years, 23, I believe. And I've always felt very, very lucky to work in what I consider to be a very special place. I think, the community is unique. It's got a unique set of challenges, but I believe that our students, and I've said this multiple times, are very, very special. I've always thought at both the elementary school and the middle school, high school, when you walk into the building, there's a tone and a tenor in the schools that you don't see in a lot of places. And so to be able to step in and assist the district in continuing to promote that kind of environment, to me, is a privilege. So again, I thank all of you for your confidence in me, and I'll work very hard to make you guys proud. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so I'm going to type unanimous.
Yay!
Thanks.
Congratulations, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. I don't believe we have anything else on the agenda. Second public input it is. So the question that was posted came in from Elena Loretto, and she asked, with this contract in item 8.6, can the district sue the engineers if they miss something major, like the asbestos missed at the Sag Harbor Learning Center? So I believe, so 8.6 is the H2M contract. And anyone can sue anyone. So I don't know that it has a specific term on when we can and cannot sue somebody. But it is posted publicly, I believe. Oh, no, it's not. It's an administrative content right now. I believe it will be posted publicly now that it's adopted. So you should be able to review it and come to conclusions on your own as to what rights it provides. I hope that's helpful. Anyone else have anything to add? All right, with that.
Jordana, before we break, earlier in the meeting, just in case people were listening, earlier in the meeting, I think it was mistakenly stated that the statistics AP exam is the 20th. It is in fact on the 22nd. And it is listed correctly on our site and College Board site, just so that folks don't get confused.
Great. Okay. With that, can I get a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
That's it, unanimous. Good night.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Nice.
Thanks.